We all follow recipes in life. Our plans, our beliefs, our ideas about how the world is supposed to work. But have you ever followed a recipe perfectly, down to the letter, and the result is just a complete, unmitigated disaster? Well, that moment, that failure, it can actually teach us something really profound, not just about baking, but about truth itself. And that brings us to this guy. This is Glenn. He's a wonderful baker on YouTube, and he kicks off one of his videos with this simple, honest confession. He was trying to bake a historical treat, a bath bun, using a very old recipe. But, well, mistakes were made. This isn't just a cooking show, though. It's actually a perfect real-world example of a deep philosophical puzzle. So today we're going to look at Glenn's baking disaster, but we're going to do it through the eyes of the philosopher O.G. Rose. We're going to see how a simple, sticky mess in a kitchen reveals this huge fundamental gap between our ideas about reality and, reality itself. All right, Section 1, a recipe for disaster. So our story starts with what O.G. Rose would call a map. For Glenn, that map is this historical recipe for bath buns. He trusts it. It looks great on paper, a clear, orderly set of steps that he believes is going to lead him to this delicious, authentic bun. And this brings us right to a core concept from O.G. Rose, the huge difference between the map and the territory. The map is the idea, the recipe. It's neat, it's simple, it's clean. But the territory? That's the experience. That's the actual real-world process of baking. And it is messy, it's complicated, and it's totally unpredictable. As we're about to see, there's always a gap between the two. O.G. Rose just puts it so well. All thoughts are models, and all models are wrong. All maps fail to be territories. Think about it. Our plans, our recipes, they're always just simplified versions of the real thing. They're useful, for sure, but they are never the thing itself. A map of a mountain is just a flat piece of paper, right? But the actual territory is this huge, three-dimensional beast full of rocks and cliffs you didn't expect. Forgetting that gap? Well, that's where all the trouble starts. Okay, Section 2, the map versus the dough. This is where it gets good. This is the moment Glenn's map, his neat, tidy recipe collides head-on with the messy, sticky, uncooperative territory of his actual dough. A clean idea meets a very, very sticky reality. In pretty much right away, things go sideways. The dough is this wet, sloppy mess. Hours go by, and it's not rising at all. Glenn is just baffled. His map, the recipe, seems to be missing huge critical steps, like kneading. He eventually figures out that the insane amount of sugar and butter in the recipe is actually killing the yeast. His direct hands-on experience is basically screaming at him that his map is garbage. And O.G. Rose just nails this idea. The thought of dough, like what's written in the recipe, is a simple, manageable little concept. But the experience of this dough, its actual stickiness, its refusal to rise, the chemistry going on inside that bowl, that is infinitely more complex. The territory is shouting back at the map maker, and it's not happy. So Section 3, when accidents reveal truth. But here's the twist. This whole disaster, it isn't just a failure. It's actually an opportunity. This is where the accident, the catastrophic collapse of the recipe, becomes a source of truth. O.G. Rose has a great term for this, borrowed from the thinker Paul Virilio, a substantive accident. Now that sounds fancy, but think of it like this, a train wreck. The horrible, catastrophic accident suddenly reveals what was truly essential, the substance to making the railway system work, things we all just took for granted. The failure itself uncovers a hidden truth. For Glenn, his failed recipe, that's his train wreck. And just look at what he does next. He doesn't just throw the dough in the trash. He admits he failed. He goes back and reviews his own evidence, literally watching the footage he shot. Then, and this is so important, he consults outside experts. He emails food historians. And finally, he starts to question his most basic assumption. What even is a bun? This is what Rose calls epistemic humility. It's being willing to let reality correct you, to let the territory redraw your map. Okay, Section 4, myths, buns, and reality. Because this whole investigation, which was born out of total failure, leads Glenn to a discovery that completely shatters his original map and reveals this incredible hidden truth about what he was trying to make all along. And here it is, the big reveal. The food historians get back to him and basically say, yeah, that whole romantic story about the bath bun, it's fake. It's a marketing myth that was invented to sell what was actually just a common, everyday, rich bun. He wasn't failing to recreate some historical treasure. He was failing to create a myth. And you can just hear the light bulb go on over Glenn's head here. He realizes how a good story, a compelling narrative, can take over and become a kind of truth in our minds, even when it has zero basis in reality. The myth had become his map, and it led him completely into the wilderness. This points to another one of O.G. Rose's brilliant distinctions, the difference between the rational and the true. The rational is a story that just makes sense. It's appealing, it's coherent, like the bath bun myth. But the true is what's actually happening in reality, no matter what the story is. And those two things are not always the same. Glenn's failure happened because he mistook a rational, good-sounding story for the truth. So, Section 5, What Baking Teaches Us. So where does this whole journey leave us? What's the final result, and what's the big lesson we can take away from this messy collision between a map and the territory? Well, the final true bath bun is nothing like what you or I would think of as a bun. It's dense, it's heavy. Honestly, it's more like a little cake. The whole failure happened because Glenn's map was based on this modern idea of a light, fluffy bread. To succeed, he had to completely throw out his map and just accept the territory for what it was, a dense, weird, cake-like reality. This quote from him just sums up the entire struggle perfectly. His frame of reference, that was his map. It was logical, it made sense to him, and it was completely, totally wrong. He had to abandon it. He had to let the confusing, sticky, messy experience of the territory teach him the truth. So I think the big takeaway is this. The goal isn't to find a perfect recipe for life, because a perfect one doesn't exist. All of our maps, all of our plans are eventually going to fail us, because reality is always, always more complex than our ideas about it. Real wisdom isn't having a perfect map, it's knowing how to navigate when that map inevitably leads you off a cliff. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Our beliefs, our career plans, our ideas about love and relationships, they're all just recipes, aren't they? There are maps for getting through the world. So the real question to ask yourself is, when has a failure, a mistake, a substantive accident in your own life forced you to throw out the map and really truly confront the real, surprising, and often difficult territory?